Hey guys, hey YouTube family, it's Dana Shay with Real Relationship Talk. Thanks so much for clicking on this video today, you guys. If you are not already subscribed to this channel, I want you to go ahead and subscribe right now and make sure that you turn your notifications on so that whenever I release a video, you can be in the know. Now, I know I've said this before, so Lord forgive me. I'm trying to be more consistent with putting out these videos, y'all, because every time I post a video, people are like, you need to post more. So this is my effort to post more. So today, you guys, you are going to be really encouraged by this conversation that I had with founder and CEO of The Life of a Single Mom, Jennifer Maggio. Now, I met Jennifer a couple years ago. I actually used to write for her blog. She has a whole blog, a huge organization, which I'm going to talk about in the episode. But this organization has reached over 500,000 single moms. So they're no small little deal, okay? And so Jennifer and I had an amazing conversation. She has got an incredible story. Like, you guys, if you think you've been through some things, Jennifer has been through some things, okay? She was pregnant 4 times by the time she was 19. And so what she did was she took all of that life and all of that experience and all of that trauma, and she created a blessing from it. And so this ministry has been able to affect hundreds and hundreds of thousands of women all across the world. They are based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I always get that. That's like a tongue twister for me. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I actually traveled down to Baton Rouge at the end of 2020, right in the middle of COVID-19. But it was super important that I go down there because I got the privilege of doing a couple trainings for the Single Moms University that is a part of A Life of a Single Mom. And so you're going to find this interview super encouraging. You are going to be challenged by it, and there's going to be some tissue moments. So if you have a Kleenex or something beside you, you might want to grab that out. So I'm super excited for you guys to hear this episode, this interview with the extraordinary Jennifer Maggio. Alrighty. Well, Jennifer, I am so excited to have you on the show today. I love what you're doing down in Baton Rouge for The Life of a Single Mom. And I really want our listeners to be able to hear all about the ministry. And I want them to hear all about why you started Life of a Single Mom. And I really want them to be able to hear from you, your personal story, because I'm sure that, you didn't just decide, what nonprofit can I start? There was some sort of passion behind it. And so I would love for you to be able to talk to our listeners and just let us know a little bit about your story. I know that you experienced homelessness and abuse and multiple teen pregnancies. And so I just would love for you to just kind of share a little bit about what God has brought you from.
Yeah, well, first, let me say thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. And I believe that whoever listens today or in the months to come, that you're not here by accident, and that the Lord, whether you're a single mom or not, that, we all have this story to tell. And I think about when people ask me about my story, where is the place to start? And because there's so much to it. And I think, the big turning point in my life really started before I knew what a single parent was. And it was when my mother was killed and my dad became a single parent overnight. And my mother was only 32 years old. And so, of course, my dad was devastated by that. And now I can look back and just see why he made some of the choices he did. It was out of a broken heart. And so he used women and alcohol to self-medicate. And that meant that my home became a very unsafe place. It was very volatile. My dad was an angry drunk, and he had lots of girlfriends and mistresses in between and during his 6 marriages. And so, now I look back and say, how could someone get married 6 times? And it's because they're looking for something. And so, my story includes lots of sexual assault. I started being assaulted when I was 3 years old. And for about 10 years, my dad was not one of my abusers. I always like to make sure I mention that. But step relatives and family friends and neighbors and people that, were left to care for myself and my twin sister, abuse became part of the regular story of my life. And so the sexual assault was one component of that, but then there was also lots of verbal and emotional abuse, and then physical abuse. And so the dysfunction in my home, the interesting component of my story is that we cleaned up really well. And we went to church every Sunday. And so we had the family photo hanging on the living room wall with whoever my dad happened to be married to at the time. And, the pastor would come and visit back in the day when, pastors would go and visit on Thursday afternoons or whatever. And we looked like we had it all together. And I know that there'll be people out there right now who you can relate to that it looks like it's all together, but inside and behind closed doors, it's falling apart. And I think that's why I do a lot of what I do in ministry today, is because I know that broken place. At 13, out of all of the abuse, the pain, the not having my mom, and just all of the things that I had endured, I began looking for love in all the wrong places. And just kind of started a journey of sexual impurity that lasted for several years, looking for my value in relationships. And it led to me being pregnant 4 times by the time I was 19.
Wow.
So I had 2 kiddos. I got pregnant the 3rd time in my senior year of high school. I had 2 miscarriages prior to that. And had my baby boy at 18. It was the first time I'd ever even held a baby before. And wound up moving in the projects and got on food stamps and welfare. It was not how I thought that my life should have gone or was going to go. And then I had another child 17 months later at 19. And so, that's kind of where the story, I don't know if you say ends in some ways or begins, depending on what way you look at it. But that's kind of the very brief overview of where I've been.
Wow, that's so much life, in 19 years. What a story. What gave you, Jennifer, I'm thinking, you said you went to church, but you all weren't technically like a Christian, godly family. What gave you the perseverance to keep going? Were there ever times in your life that you just thought, I just want to end this all? I'm tired of the abuse. I'm tired of being misused. What gave you, what was that thing inside of you that kept you going?
Well, I think, it's difficult, Dana, because I think about my dad now, who's has passed away many years ago, and I think about his journey, and just what does it mean to be a Christian household. And I think that he was a deacon in the Baptist church for many years before my mother died, and he was raised in a Christian family and had this foundation, but there were all of these secret things that needed to be swept under the rug, even in his own childhood. And so I think that it set a precedence of, okay, there's your church life, there's what you look like on Sunday mornings, and that God is real and you love him, but then the walking out of that relationship is very different. And so he had to put up this facade of perfectionism. And quite honestly, that's what I learned about church, was that Sundays was a facade, and then the rest of your life really didn't commingle with that. So, so what gave me the will to live? There was a time when my kids were very little. I think I'm trying to think, my son was about 2 years old, and my boyfriend had trashed my apartment and had abused me. And I had these 2 babies, and I huddled on a bathroom floor contemplating taking my own life. And honestly, the reason that I didn't was because I knew what it was like to be raised without a mom. And I didn't want my children to have to go through that. There's no love like the love of a mom. And if you were raised without that, it's just a void that's so hard to fill. And so I think that gave me the will to push through when I had my kids, that I vowed that my children's life would not be like mine, that I would right all of the wrongs that I had endured. And in the early years, that was very difficult because we duplicate what we see. And
That's
so
right.
lots of screaming, there was lots of abuse in my home, there was lots of cussing, there was a lot of all those things that I had seen in my early years of parenting. I duplicated. But I guess, that's a very long answer, but I think part of it was, just my children. And I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 9 years old. And I remember that experience very well, and the walking down to the front and recognizing that I needed a savior. And although my life did not reflect that for many years, I never forgot the moment that that God rescued me.
Mm.
And sometimes the freedom takes a lot longer than the rescue. The rescue is instantaneous, but the freedom is a walking out. And so I kind of always knew that there was something bigger than me. The intimacy came later with the Lord.
I'm sitting here writing down that quote, the freedom takes longer than the rescue. And I think that that's so applicable to so many of us, whether you are a single mom, whether maybe there's someone listening that's struggling with trying to live godly and they're fallen into sexual temptation, whether that's a broken marriage, like sometimes the freedom takes longer than the
Mhm.
rescue. So I love that you pointed that out. So here you are living in the projects, you're on government assistance. What was the turning point for you? How did you leave that whole life behind and pursue the life that you're living today?
Yeah, well, I think it's so important for people to know the process, because I think what happens, even for us in ministry, is that we want to give someone a word of encouragement, want to give someone the truth, and we expect instantaneous results. And
Right.
although God could certainly reach down and pluck us out of our misery, it's almost always a process, because there's a lot to be learned in that. And so for me, that bathroom floor moment was a defining moment for me, where I just decided that I would go back to church. I hadn't been to church in a long time. And honestly, I didn't go to church because there was so much shame with me having two children outside of marriage. And I felt very judged and like I didn't fit in there. And it was very obvious that I had sin in my life, because that's, having a kid outside of marriage is probably one of the most public ways that you expose yourself. And so all of those things kept me out of church. But the extreme brokenness, and I had no friends, I had no money, and I really was getting to a place where I had no hope. And so I loaded those babies up in the car on that next Sunday morning, and I went to church. And there was nothing life transformational that happened on that Sunday. And I think it's important that people understand that. I sat in that pew miserable. I sat bitter and angry and hurt and broken and self conscious, and felt like that the whole church was staring at me. And I couldn't even tell you what the pastor preached that Sunday. But I made the decision to go back again and again and again. And part of it was because they offered a free meal on Sunday nights. And part of it was because I was so lonely that I needed to at least sit in the room with people, even if they didn't know me and weren't friends with me. And so it was just this kind of continual, gradual drawing back to the church that is what changed my life. But I also want people to know that I was in church, every Sunday morning thereafter, but I shut the clubs down most Friday and Saturday nights. And I had my boyfriend living with me part-time, and I was still in sexual promiscuity. And the reason I think it's so important for people to hear that is because the decision for me to go back to church and begin to serve the Lord, it took a long time for me to start really living that out in purity and in intimacy and in consecration with the Lord. So just because you have some things going on in your life, it doesn't keep you out of God's house, and it doesn't keep you out of His love, and it doesn't keep you invisible in His kingdom. It's a process, and we all have to kind of get there.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I know for sure that there are women and men listening right now who are just what you're saying, Jennifer. They are going to church every week, and they're in their hearts, they really do want to please the Lord, and they're struggling. And there's that tension, there's that war between shame and trying to please God, and messing up and then feeling guilty and then repenting. And I live that life. I remember when Sean and I, before we got married, and we were sleeping together, and I knew what the Bible taught about sex, and it was so hard because in my heart I really did want to please the Lord. It wasn't like I was just kind of being like, oh, whatever, I can do what I want. I really wanted to please the Lord. But the temptation and the love, when you're in a loving relationship, you want to have sex with that person. And so I can definitely attest to being at the altar on Sunday and being back in my mess on Monday, and just living that constant tension. I think that it really it really can take a toll on you mentally and for sure spiritually. And so I love the fact that you're just really bringing that out, because I think that there are people who are really going to be encouraged that no matter where you are in your journey right now, in your process, we know sanctification is a process. It's not like a one and done thing and you're just holy all of a sudden. It's a process. And so thank you so much for bringing that out. And so here you are, you're growing in your faith and you're becoming sanctified. This process is starting, even if you don't even realize it. And then what actually gave you the passion to start Life of a Single Mom?
Well, I kind of the end of my story is I made a decision that I was going to end the relationship that I had been in for 7 years. The one where I was having sex outside of marriage, the one that I was being abused in, the one that I had been really ignoring, that God was telling me was not the person for me. I made a decision that I was going to end that relationship. The hardest thing I ever did, because I had ended the relationship 25 times before, and he would show up again and I would, open the door to the relationship again. So it was a constant going back. Those soul ties were so real. But I moved out of town and I started attending church, and this different church. And I was in service, and honestly, I was still praying that we would be together. I was saying, God, please change his heart. Like, I want my family. I want my kids to have their dad. I want my happily ever after that I never had in my own home. And I was begging God to change his heart, to, Lord, make him want the things of you, because I really was beginning to really walk with the Lord. And the Holy Spirit whispered in my heart on that Sunday morning so clearly, stop praying for me to change his heart. Start praying for me to change yours. And it was the defining moment, because what began to happen was I realized that I had to let him go, that my heart had to relinquish this relationship in order for God to do what he wanted to do. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. But the more that I fell in love with the Lord, the more I was able to let that relationship go, and the soul ties broke off my life. And once they broke, there was a freedom that came over me that is inexplicable if you've never experienced it. And I know that you're talking about, even with your relationship with Sean, and the going back to sleeping together and almost rationalizing your sin. Well, eventually we're going to get married, and so this is, okay, and all these things that we kind of tend to do. But the freedom that comes from walking in obedience to the Lord is unexplainable unless you've done it, and unless you let everything that the world tells you need go. So all the counterfeits, once they fall, you realize that it's just you and the Lord standing. And so I wound up meeting my husband, my now husband, and kind of having my happily ever after. He adopted my 2 children, and we had a third child together. And I was very successful in corporate America, and really could have left my old life behind. But the Lord never allowed me to forget what it was like to be that 19-year-old mama huddled on that bathroom floor in the projects, and what it was like to be in the pit of hell, and to feel very alone, and to feel forsaken. And so the life of a single mom really birthed out of me kicking and screaming, saying, no, I don't know enough scripture. I'm not holy enough. I'm not worthy to lead anything. But the Lord burdening me to where I almost couldn't function in my job. I would go to work every day crying. And this was the job that had rescued me into financial freedom, and the job I thought I'd retire in. And God said, this is not the calling on your life. That was for a season, but the season is over. And now the new season is what became known as the life of a single mom.
Wow. So I've read, here you guys are, 2007, a small support group in a living room, 3 women. And now that has grown into, you all have served almost 700,000 women in the past decade. Did you have any vision, Jennifer, for how big the life of a single mom would be?
I am overwhelmed. I don't know why. I know the numbers. I don't know why I'm overwhelmed this morning, but no, I did not. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have done it, which is almost embarrassed to say. But there's certainly this level of just humility that God would use me. And forgive me for my emotion. But,
oh, no, I'm getting emotional over here listening to all of this. Seriously.
I know that there are listeners that are out there who have a dream. They have a goal. They have a heart burden for something, and they don't feel worthy of the call. I get up every morning and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. The ministry has grown to such a level, and the Lord has given me vision for so much more. But I just feel like there's when there's a calling on your life, there's a blessing that comes with that, and responsibility also, but a blessing. And so God just opens the doors. I don't have, my husband and I started the ministry with $2,000. And that money actually came from a contest that I had won, with this idea that no single mom would walk alone. So I submitted this idea to this company, and they gave me $2,000, and that's what started the ministry. And I walked away from a six-figure income, and didn't earn a salary for 7 years with the ministry. It was a very difficult time of eating ramen noodles and red beans and rice, honestly, and wanting to go back to corporate America, because ministry is long hours and little thanks sometimes. And people, you don't get it right every time, and you hurt people, and you don't say the right thing, and you can't do enough because you can't be people's everything. And so did I know it was going to be this big? No. And I probably would have ran, but I'm grateful to God that one single mom would know her value and her worth, that one single mom would know that there's nothing she's ever done that would separate her from the love of God, and that she would know she can make it. So it's worth it. The difficulties, the criticisms, the fundraising, the endless fundraising to pay a staff, all those things are worth it if a single mom can come to know the Lord in the way that I do.
Yeah, I think the thing that I love about the single mom, I've been blessed to be able to write for the blog and, to come down to Baton Rouge and do some training for Single Moms University. I think the thing that I love so much about the ministry is its holistic approach, that you all aren't just giving out financial means, but you're really trying to educate these moms. You're trying to, show them who they are, give them their value, give them financial literacy tools. And so I want to know if you could just maybe tell our listeners, like, what is the thing that really keeps you up at night about the ministry? Like, what are you most excited about right now that's happening? Is there something that you're about to launch? Kind of give us a little sneak peek as to kind of some of the inners of the ministry.
So there's a couple of things I would say. First of all, this is our 10th year in ministry. And so officially, now I started doing the work in 2007, but officially this is our 10th year. And so I think it's kind of like we made it. Wow, God, we got over a milestone. And so I think in that way, we have our 10-year anniversary gala that's coming up in May, which is a super, super exciting time of just celebration of the hand of God and his faithfulness. And I think it'll be an inspirational time for people. And then we're also bringing back our national conference in August. And that conference has been the testimonies that have come out of the chains that fell at conferences over the last several years are awe-inspiring. And so we didn't do it last year because of COVID, but we just said, hey, COVID schmovid, we're going for the conference this year. And that's in August. Those are two really exciting things. But I think just all of the things that we've done through the years and the ways that we've tried to serve single moms, I'm just as excited about the 1600th support group as I am the first support group we ever get. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. And my staff would tell you that. I mean, every time a church says, yes, let's do a single moms group, I'm over the moon, because they didn't have to say yes. They didn't have to catch the vision, and they did. And so I think in that way, there's nothing I'm not excited about with the ministry data. That's the short answer.
It's amazing. I think it's so great. Like, I know your passion. I could see it. I could feel it. And what I just want to know, Jennifer, like, as you're serving these women right now, you're on the other side, you're married, you've got adult children now, like, what keeps you relatable? Like, do you see yourself in these moms? Like, what is it that keeps you getting up every day with the same excitement, the same passion that you had back in 2007 for these ladies?
Well, I think there's a few things. One, when you're walking out the call of God on your life, there's a confidence that comes over you where I don't have to make apologies for God's word when I'm speaking and when I'm encouraging. I don't have to second guess when he's given me a word for women, or, oh, will they receive it because I'm married now and I'm not still walking that single parenting journey? I mean, how do you tell a woman how to have a strong godly marriage when you've never been there. So I
That's
think
right.
having that full circle moment of having been on that bathroom floor in the projects, but then also having walked out the different tools, steps, and skills that I've gained, and now walking out as a married woman, what it is to be a good wife, and to honor my husband. I think that full circle moment people can appreciate. Has there been criticism sometimes through the years of like you don't understand, and you've not been there and you've been married for some years now? Of course, but I think that that's usually birthed out of someone else's pain and hurt.
Hmm.
Because when you walk in authority, you know it, and
Right.
so that's part of it. But I also think the other part is when you've been to the pit of hell, you don't forget.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that the pit of hell is single parenthood. I'm suggesting that being suicidal on the bathroom floor in the projects was the pit of hell. And
Sure.
so, and God can bring me back there in a moment. Like I can, in a moment, sitting in a counseling room with a single mom, remember how broken I was and
Mm.
remember how I felt like there was no way out. God just, it'll just be this burden that'll fall on me. And so I think that's what keeps me relatable is that I'm never going to forget. I'm never going to forget that moment, God willing. And so, and the pastor that's standing at church on Sunday morning doesn't have to have had cancer to have compassion and to be able to speak into that person's life in that moment. There's
That's
just
right.
when you've been called, you do it. And so,
Yeah. I think the thing that makes you so powerful as a leader though is that you have this calling, but you also have that life experience. I think about what I do in supporting marriages, and you had your bathroom floor moment. I've had literally my own bathroom floor moment when I found myself, realizing that I had committed adultery, in my marriage, and not ever thinking that I could be somebody who would be in that situation. And so when I am encouraging the couples and the marriages that I'm encouraging, I'm literally taking myself back to that moment and realizing that I did a Facebook Live this week. A really prominent relationship guru fell into adultery. And so I was encouraging the folks that, we never know what we're capable of until we're in that moment. And so it fosters humility in us to know that, none of us have arrived. None of us are inoculated from sin or failure or mistakes or heartache. And so for a single mom who's listening to this, I think your story, Jennifer, is so encouraging because you didn't stay there. I think that's the thing is that, I grew up in a single mom home, and I look at my mom has a very similar story to you of just, abuse and all of those things, but she didn't stay there. And
mhm.
she got out of that situation. And so I had my own single mom testimony. I was single for, I don't know, 6 weeks. Chris, my son, my oldest, was 6 weeks old when Sean and I got married. And so I don't have like a long history of that, but I look at what God rescued me from and what could have been. And so I just want to know, Jennifer, how do you think that sometimes, if you've never been a single parent, if you've never struggled with sexual sin, what are some misconceptions do you think sometimes people have about single moms?
I think there's a few things. One, that they always have their hand out, that they're all living in sexual immorality, that they're, that there's always sin in their life. That those are probably some of the common things. I think that sometimes people don't always voice what their misconceptions are, and I think that it's easy for us because I said even earlier in the show that having a child outside of marriage is one of the most public sins that you can commit because it's exposed. And yet, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people around the country addicted to porn. There are people walking in gluttony right now, but we never call that out as a church. There are
Mm,
so many sins that we're walking in, but the single parenthood and single unwed pregnancy, I guess, is the hill that some churches want to die on. And I would just suggest that we need to really look at number one, let's call sin sin. So make no mistake, we're not placating sin. We're not promoting single motherhood. We're not saying, hey, women go get a divorce and be this, this superwoman single mom. We're not promoting divorce or unwed pregnancy. We're meeting people where they are, the same way that the church should be meeting people where they are, and
mhm.
then giving them the tools, the skills, the power, and the encouragement they need to then walk into what God created them to be. And so yeah, there's definitely some misconceptions, and some is reality. There are certainly some truths that we can see through statistics and things about the single mother home, but how long do we want to camp out there? Like, how long do we want to say, oh, she had 2 kids outside of marriage, so she's beyond now any type of ministry? Thank God pastors saw more in me than sexual sin.
So good. So how can we, married people, maybe singles without children, how can we better support single parents, especially single moms?
Yes. So I would say there's a few things. One, every church should have a single moms ministry. I'm so passionate about that. The same way you have a youth ministry, the same way you have a women's ministry. I believe that there's a real power in the gathering. Our ministry's motto is no single mom walks alone. And whether it's a Sunday school class or connect group or whatever that looks like for your church, there should be a place where single moms gather on a regular basis, not to segment them or anything like that, but to really draw them in. 2 out of 3 single moms don't go to church anywhere. So that's not a single mom's problem. That's a body of Christ problem. And so how do we really begin to be creative in ministry to them? So I think single mom support groups is one. I also think there's a lot of practical things. I think about the people who served me through the years, and sometimes it was just someone who would watch my kids for free so that I could go to the grocery store by myself. Sometimes it was just so I could have a few moments alone, which was rare. It meant something to me. We have an ebook on our website called 50 Ways to Serve Single Moms. And it's just little things that maybe you haven't thought about that would mean a lot to a single mom in your life. And I'll also say, single mamas, if you're out here listening, you're not excluded from servanthood. And so you can serve someone else. You can serve another single mom. There are things that we all can do to serve one another and to wash the feet of the people that are in our lives. And so and maybe there's a single mom listening who says, hey, my church doesn't have a single moms group. I'd really like to start one. Then you begin the conversation with your pastor and pray that the Lord would orchestrate a volunteer team and some leaders. And so I think we're all in this thing together of seeing that no single mom walks alone.
Oh yeah, I love that. So I'm definitely going to link to the 50 ways to serve single moms in the show notes of this podcast. So you guys can go to realrelationshiptalk.com/episode 33 to get that. And Jennifer, how can people find out more about you, the ministry, if there is a single mom, just like you mentioned, who wants to start this in her church? Are there resources on the website that would give her kind of a blueprint to start one?
Yes. And there's lots of resources for you to find a group near you, free ebooks, podcast, whatever, at thelifeofasinglemom.com. That'll be a real encouragement if you're a single mom.
Awesome. Well, this has been so rich, Jennifer. Thank you so much just for who you are, what you bring to single moms, who you are, and the body of Christ. As you've been talking, I'm like, she sounds just like Beth Moore with your Southern drawl.
People say that all the time. I've heard Beth Moore through the years, but the more excited I get, the more Southern I become.
Well, you are certainly passionate, and that just bleeds through. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about the gala. I'm excited about 10 years. I'm like, if you've done all of this in the first 10 years, man, the sky is the limit. And so I'm just grateful to have been a part of this journey in such a tiny way, and just looking forward so much to what God has in store for you in the ministry, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dana. Good to see your pretty face.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope that you were encouraged by that conversation. I know I sure was. I just think that what she's doing, and not only her, but her whole organization, it is literally having lasting impact. This is what you call living a legacy, y'all. And so I want you to make sure that you support this organization. I'm going to link to the Life of a Single Mom in the description below. And then also you can head over to realrelationshiptalk.com/episode 33, and you'll be able to get the show notes of the vodcast podcast. And also you'll find the links and everything over there. Plus, I just want you to go look at my beautiful website. So pretty. I just want you to see it. So hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, that you have your notifications on. I'm so excited about just all that I'm able to do through this podcast. It's amazing meeting so many of you, reading your comments, getting your messages. It's super encouraging. So keep them coming. And I can't wait to see you on the next video. Take care.